Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed and we are in the Meno. Again, today, a quick apology for last episode where there was my audio cutting out when I spoke quietly. That's a gate filter on my audio. It's supposed to cut out the noise for when I'm not talking, but it was set too high, and so it cut out the low end. I did go into some editing of yesterday's video, which was on midwifery. I raised the vocal levels and turned down the audio levels of the music, which I think helped. I still posted it, but every now and again my audio cuts out when I'm a little bit quiet. I fixed that gate and we should be rolling now. It's summer where I am, so I have to turn on the fan I have here because it's so hot. Speaking of hot, the text is hot right now. Because let's do a quick recap. Meno thinks he knows what virtue is, just like everyone else that we share the planet with, including our authority figures. Socrates asked him, please define it. Not only did he not know what virtue is, just like everyone, just like ourselves, at the beginning of our philosophical journey. So we look for ourselves in the character of Meno. Not only does he not know what virtue is, his idea is terrible. It involves violence against people you don't like. It involves subjugating women. It involves slavery. Not uncommon. But what is common is, also what's not uncommon is just to be wrong about what we think is excellence or virtue of our soul. What's the best that we can be? And, of course we don't know. We are not taught it, which is the next part of the text. Meno has the best education from well-respected professors, the great Gorgias. And he hasn't learnt jack. He has learnt to be very confident in his ignorance or his... Now, ignorance has a special name and has a special meaning in philosophy. It's not just unawareness. It's to be certain about that which you are mistaken about. So it's a level of certainty in our false beliefs. All right, so he got that from his education. Does that sound like other people we share the planet with? Does that sound like us sometimes? So, he paid a lot of money, or he used his family connections to have an education which made him more entrenched in his false idea about what's good and excellent for our soul. What should we be doing with our time on the planet? How should we be living? In the best possible way. Now, another part, Socrates says, oh, by the way, if you know what virtue is, please define it. He couldn't. All he could do, all Meno can do, all we can do before we awaken to philosophy is point to examples of things that we like or dislike. I like when this happens. I don't like when this happens. Pointing to physical expressions. Now, there are some people on the planet who are better than others and happen to have a natural affinity towards that which is closer to the good. For example, the more intelligent and wonderful human beings that we share the planet with point to wealth equality, replacing capitalism with a rational system which actually meets human needs in harmony with the planet and our environment and our resources instead of this sick game of exploitation and death. There are other people who defend capitalism, who are way off the mark. Some people who point to care, benefit, as a focus that society should be based around. Some people realize the value of reflecting on causes and principles. So there are people who are closer to the truth of goodness and excellence and virtue, but we want to nail it down. We want to have it. We want to grab it and have it, known it. Make it our own, make it our way of being, but also have such an understanding of that virtue, excellence of the soul, the idea of what is actually good, that we can share it with others and actually benefit in the highest possible way. So, the first thing we have to do is define it. Well, before defining it, we got to know how to define things. Meno couldn't define it. He could just point to physical examples. That's not a definition. If somebody said, can you define a cat? And you said, oh, an orange cat and a black cat and a sassy cat. That's not a definition of a cat. There are examples of cats. So when Meno points to slavery, points to subjugating women, points to harming your enemies and being good to your friends as virtue, again, common as true today. In other words, we have to wake up to Socrates' words. It's been 2,500 years. The alarm clock's going off. Time to wake up to philosophy. Because, thumbs down for our counterattack against Socrates for 2,500 years. But now we can listen to him and awaken the Logos and actually learn how to understand things. Because defining the thing is also understanding it. In order to define a cat, you take those examples, those disparate things, those the manyness, and you have to bring it into the one. What's the same? A necessary defining quality of cats that apply to all of these cats. That's true for any cat. You could walk into a new room and see a new cat that you've never seen before, but because you have the idea that's not an example, or we could say a principle of catness, you can point to this new object and say, oh, I've never seen this before. That's a cat. Now this is a chicken. But in the example, you're seeing a cat. So definition and understanding go together. But Meno doesn't know how to do that. Nor do we. So that's why we're reading. We're learning how to understand. We're learning how to define. But also, that same art of understanding, of defining, not just pointing to things you like and don't like, is needed to communicate that. So many debates on YouTube with philosophers, and I use inverted commas because they ain't philosophers, they are philodoxias, lovers of opinion, not lovers of wisdom, because wisdom is one of these true things that apply to everyone. Whereas modern philosophers think it's just having an opinion and being able to debate pro it well. Argue it. Socrates calls that argumentation anti-logos, because it's the use of words to prove an opinion you already hold and convince people. That's nothing to do with truth. That's nothing to do with benefit. It's actually against the logos, so we call it anti-logos, because the logos is supposed to include, supposed to invite, supposed to be open to all, and supposed to lead you to an understanding and definition of true principles that are always true, definitions that are always true. Not only that, it's a gateway to having a psychological, opening up a different organ that we have, not a physical organ that can see those physical things we're talking about, but an organ that can directly apprehend principles. Some people call those enlightenment experiences. Some people call them spiritual experiences because you're seeing a non-physical realm. So we say we'll call it the spiritual realm. Some people call those experiences metaphysical experiences because it's before these principles that are causes of the physical world have to exist before the physical world. So we say meta, or before physics. Different ways of talking about the same sort of thing. Nous. So that's also an element of the dialectic. And being able to communicate it. So keep in mind, what we are talking about are not physical examples, but are things that eternally exist in this realm of being. Necessarily, for there to be a new cat, there has to be a principle of catness that allows the physical world of generation to generate a new cat. Same for virtue. There is a principle that has an existence metaphysically of excellence, of virtue, that we want to, first of all, understand. Therefore, we need to define it. How do we define things? Meno doesn't know. Socrates says, that's the dialectic. That's what you should have been learning at school. The dialectic helps us to define and understand. But after we've defined and understood it, we want to integrate it. Demonstration, definition and demonstration. We are building the categories of the dialectic as we are using them. It's fascinating. So, definition and demonstration. We want to enact it, live it, integrate it into our being. And if it's the right thing to do that we should be doing at all times, if virtue and excellence is an all-the-time thing, is a state of being thing, and maybe even can be a state of being we can take with us beyond this physical life, and therefore something really worth learning because we only have a short time here, we want to make sure we do it right, then it's a state of being we can integrate and relate to, that we can take with us in our spiritual experiences, in meditation when we separate from the physical body, in wherever we go to where we die. In fact, this may be the ticket for going to a better place when we die, which is what Socrates points to in the Phaedo. I've completed my work in mastering the dialectic, and dialectic being the exercise of philosophy. So I'm going to a different place. If you're a true philosopher, meet me there. I'm not going to the realm of being to go through what happens there as part of a reincarnating soul. I've done my reincarnation because I've mastered the art of the logos. So should you, because hey, come join that party. That's the Phaedo. Okay, so we could see the Meno as a kind of lead-in to the Phaedo, which was the previous book we read together here. The dialectic needed to define and not just point to things you like. Needed to understand and not be in ignorance, certain about what you're wrong about. Needed for balloons. So we have some balloons on the screen. Needed to be able to communicate it. Meno was using the logos in an anti-logos way. He's using words to attack Socrates, to distract from the conversation, to go on tangents, to shut down the conversation. These are all debate bro bullshit tactics that we learn at school, and we learn from our politicians, and we learn from our educators, and we learn from our judges and lawyers, and we learn from everyone else in positions of authority in our world now, all of whom can be brought together from the many. I'm pointing at physical examples of people in ignorance about virtue, and so what do I have to do? Bring them together. What's the common feature that defines or causes all of these authority figures in the current period of history that we're living in to be ignorant and causing harm while certain that they are doing the right thing? What's the common feature? A lack of dialectic. Why are they all like Meno? They have Meno's problem. And newsflash, so are we. We are like Meno because we haven't learned the dialectic, but that's why we're here. So when Meno tries his debate bro bullcrap on Socrates, Socrates points out, hey, by the way, I'm not going to relate to you in that way. That's dumb. What I am going to do is demand a strict adherence to the logos. In other words, you can't just lie. So if we were making laws for our society, the first law we should make is you can't knowingly lie on TV or media. Right now, the fascist Nazis of friends of Donald Trump and his friends who have taken over America, are doing that. They are just openly lying about everything all the time. It's insane. But it's very important to see what happens when this is allowed. If people make their decisions based on the facts that they're given, if you are screwing up the facts, you are screwing up their decisions. Therefore, it should be a law that you can't knowingly lie to people on TV or media because you can manipulate them to get them to act against their best interests. Law number 1. Straight up. And this is the principle that Socrates is saying, look, if you were going to take this tack with me, you just asked me to define shape, and I used the word color because we both know you know what color is. If you say, well, I don't know what color is, right? This is a technique that the fascists and so on, the most ignorant and harmful people in our world use. I don't know. The day of the recording, about a couple of days ago, a reporter said, oh, by the way, Donald Trump, you're selling crypto, which we all know is a scam for you to exploit the trust in your fans to get them to steal their money. That's what crypto is. Are you going to continue to do crypto scams as president? I don't know, was his response. Mental. I don't know. There we go. Fixed my video. My video was a little bit out of sync at the beginning. Hopefully it's a bit better now. Actually, let's just fix one more thing. Excuse me taking a moment here to fix my settings on my OBS. Okay. So I would require you to follow the logo strictly. In other words, if you say that you know what color is, you can't just take it back and say, well, what if I don't? So all of the techniques that we see used by politicians and abusers and manipulators in our world, well, what if this happens? What if socialism is bad? What if immigrants are invading to steal your jobs? I'm not saying it. I'm saying what if? Well, you are saying it. Stop lying. Also, you know that's not true. We can't have a conversation. We call that being a bad faith actor if you are going to just negate your own conclusions. However, if you are not being a dick like that, being a debate bro dick who isn't actually interested in conversation, learning, truth, understanding, and anything good, you are just interested in being a police for ignorance and harm. If you're not playing that game, debate bro, then I'll treat you like a friend. That's when he introduces the idea of the dialectic. This dialectic thing. How to follow the reasoning of the conversation, not insisting on the beliefs you already carry. Even people who have started to learn about the logos and dialectic think it's a technique to push them to the conclusions they already have. That's not the logos. The logos has its own impetus, has its own direction, has its own flow. Our job is to share in it by participating in it. Well, participation is the wrong word because it has the word part. You're not taking a part in it. It isn't diminished. That's a language of the physical world. So all these debate bro fascists and terrible people in the world, these sorts of people think that they gain by taking a part, a piece of the, if they want the whole pizza, that means everyone else has to starve. That's capitalism. People who are stuck in the physical way of looking at reality, no principles, no ideas, no causes, no dialectic, no truth, and no benefit. These people use the word participation. I have to take a part. You can only have rich people if you have people dying of starvation. That's what rich means. Rich doesn't mean adding to the pool, it's taking from the pool. That's important. This is something that I am surprised people haven't woken up to yet. The idea that if you work a job and you get $10 an hour and your boss is getting $20 an hour, that hour you've worked hasn't made him $20 richer and you $10 richer. It has made you poorer. Because if somebody else is getting more rich for your work and wealth is relative, then he is, for every hour, the gap is getting bigger. This is important. Wealth is a gap. That's why 1,000,000 yen is not the same as $1 million. It's not an objective thing, it's a relative thing. People are only going to do what you say, which is the whole point of money, obey you, sacrifice their life, freedom, and resources to you if they have to, and they're poor and they're struggling. If everyone had $1 million, we wouldn't have the opportunity for this kind of exploitation. So what? So we are not taking a part of the Logos, we are sharing in it. So our question is, how do we share in it? If the Logos has its natural flow, has its own impulse, isn't just learning language so you can debate people, and if it's a river that has its own flow and direction towards the good, then anyone can jump in. Hey, grab a tire. Grab one of those floaty tires to jump on and float down the river with all of us, says Socrates. That's the dialectic. So, if that's the case, then our question is, well, what is virtue? Shouldn't it be something tied with the ability to participate or to share in the Logos? So how do we do that? If it's not something we do or insist upon with our ignorance, insisting upon our false beliefs, which is debate bro stuff, how do we put ourselves in a position or a state of mind to be most receptive to sharing in the gift of the Logos, which is all pervasive? It's everything. Now that question has brought us to states of mind. It's not just the skill of dialectic for, what have we got on the table so far? Let's put it on the board. We got a list, and if we have a list, we should put it on the board because we can use the list as an exercise for dialectic. Arranging the terms in the list in a dialectic fashion, that's the game. So, we need to define. We need to understand. Important things like virtue. We need to be able to communicate it in a friendly, as a true friend. Talked about that in yesterday's episode. Being a true friend and lover, which requires working to become free of the pathologos, those ignorant beliefs we insist on, and learning to develop this. Friendly, inclusive, all those good things. We've seen all three of these things as the dialectic. I can't do that. There we go. But we've also seen we need to be in an open, receptive state of mind. To share You can even call it the self logos because that's where it comes from, the self. So, how do we do that? And is this a necessary precondition for the dialectic? Because sharing the logos is the dialectic. Or is it the result of the dialectic? Could be both. So that's a question we can take with us. If this is the question, then we can wonder about how this relates to aporia, the state of being stung or puzzled beyond belief. Puzzled, curious. Because to be puzzled and curious or stung, but also at a loss. You don't know. You're not using your debate bro use of words from your education, kind of education, to act as though you know. No, you're at a loss. Or don't know. Okay? So, this state of mind is this virtue. Because this allows for us to share in this, which is this. So sharing, so this open, receptive, aporia, stung, at a loss, don't know, but okay with not knowing, but also puzzled and curious, and not insisting on your ignorant beliefs. This is necessary for this game that Socrates is inviting Meno and his slave boy into, which is sharing in the logos. Sharing in the logos. If you have some understanding of the dialectic in your back pocket, it's the dialectic. This is the structure of the logos. And the dialectic is needed to define things, to understand things, and to communicate them well. So it all comes to this state of mind, which is interesting. Because, so Meno couldn't define, couldn't understand. His communication was terrible and abusive and aggressive. Also, this led him to being stung. That I am stung, I can't talk, and I'm mad about it. So Socrates had to show that don't be mad about being ignorant. Be okay with it. Be okay with being at a loss. Be okay with not knowing. Don't try to attack people with different beliefs than you, Israel. The Roman Catholic Church, the Nazi Party, you name it. The family down the street who have their own way of being and they get really mad if you question it. Don't be like those assholes. I shouldn't use the word assholes. Assholes serve a very important function. Those jerks, don't be like them. Be okay, because that's being open-minded and curious and stung. That's where we are in the text. The slave boy thought he knew how to do a certain maths equation, which turned out to be Pythagoras, but he was wrong. Not only would this being wrong limit his own ability to share in math, but if he told anyone or if he became a teacher, like a politician or an actual teacher or a podcaster or a content producer or an influencer or all these people, his ignorance would be doing harm to all of them if they trusted them or believed them. What did we just say? Trump supporters trusted him, and he's lying to them to steal their money and enslave and murder them for his money and power and fame. So you don't want to do that. So therefore, it's important that you be made aware of where you're missing the mark. Now the word missing the mark is amartia in the Greek. This word amartia is often translated as sin, as though you are bad for not knowing. You are a sinner. You should repent. This is bullshit. You never punish a child for getting the wrong answer at school. You get curious and puzzled about why he's missing the mark. What is he thinking? At what point did he fall off the train of the logos or the dialectic? Always don't hit students. Similarly, if a adult is wrong about something, you don't murder them. You don't put them in jail. You don't torture them. You don't genocide their family and all of their friends and loved ones. You never do that. It's wrong. Instead, you become curious and puzzled. Aporia, stung is the word. Get curious about why you missed the mark. And then do the opposite of all those terrible things, which, by the way, are just excuses to play out your pathologos, the cause of your own ignorance. That's not in the Meno. That's what we are learning from philosophical midwifery. Instead, be okay with being puzzled. In the text, we can see right at the beginning, Socrates was okay. He said, look, right at the beginning, you want to talk about virtue? I don't know what it is. I stand in need of knowing this. I don't know. Later on, we'll recognize this as a statement of his state of mind of aporia. I don't know. I'm not trying to debate you into the right opinion. I'm starting this whole interaction, page 1, by saying I don't know. What was the reaction to this? What would happen if you said this to people? What would the trolls on the internet or the terrible people at the bar say? Ha ha ha. You don't know. Truly Socrates doesn't know what virtue is. Then I'm going to go home and tell everyone that you are an ignorant idiot. As though having all the right answers is the height of virtue. Ever talked to a boss in capitalism? Ever had a boss? You have to pretend all of their stupid, dumb, wrong opinions are right. Otherwise, you get fired. Isn't that what's happening? Is everyone, all of the rich oligarchs, rich businessmen, schmoozing up to Donald Trump as though he's never wrong about anything? Does Trump insist all the time? Perfect phone call, never made any mistakes, never did anything wrong ever, while doing all the mistakes all the time. Compulsive sociopathic liar. Couldn't be doing more mistakes. Never made a mistake. Are we seeing in real time the implications of Meno's state of mind with Donald Trump and all of the other similar fascists and oligarchs and politicians? Yes. Is that interesting? Yes. What does Owen Wilson say?
Wow.
What do all of his brothers say?
Wow. He didn't know what solipsism was.
No.
Wow. 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 Wow.
That other guy about solipsism, he wasn't there. He just stuck his head in the window. That's Ben Shapiro.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
Okay, that's a drop that points to the fact that these this is the debate, bro. This is the gatekeeping of philosophy. You have to know all these complicated terms to share in the logos. No, you don't. No, you don't. Even the slave boy who hasn't had any education was able to answer questions honestly with a genuinely curious state of mind. And this slave boy was brought to realize that it's okay to not know. In fact, it's better to realize you were wrong, as opposed to Meno, who was making fun of him. Now, let's not forget, Socrates clapped back, smacked his ass down by saying, oh, no, yeah, you know what? Not only do I not know, oh, friend, I'm being friendly to you now, but you may also say that I have not, up until the present time, encountered anyone who knows what virtue is. So not only do I not know, you don't know. And if you're a thinking person, who's better? Socrates, who realizes he doesn't know what virtue is, which is a question, like, what is virtue if Socrates doesn't know it? Or is this just a state of mind for sharing in the logos because he's meeting Meno where he's at? Don't know. Lots of questions, lots of puzzles in this text. But who's better? Meno, who thinks he knows that what he doesn't, or Socrates, who realizes he doesn't know it? Now, this is the essence of the quote about Socrates that is often misquoted. Socrates is so wise because he says he knows nothing. That's not what he said. He's not mistaken about what he knows. So, Socrates slams his ass down. Of course, I'm having a bit of fun. He's not slamming his ass down. He's inviting him into sharing. He's making fun of this way of being or state of mind where education is acting though your false opinions are right and trying to get away with that and for your image or ego. Making fun of that crap and saying, you know what? No one knows. Which means you don't know. Which means your dumb teacher doesn't know because he says, wait, didn't you meet my teacher Gorgias when he was in Athens? Yup. Doesn't it appear that he knew? I don't remember. Use your brain, Meno. Of course he doesn't know. Popular philosopher, though. So we can see a lot of parallels between what's happening here and our current state of humanity in 2025. And wherever you're recording it, whenever you're listening to this, if you're listening to this in the future. Okay, so being wrong and being aware that you're wrong is good. Aporia. In fact, we have just seen it might be key to understanding everything else. If definition, understanding, and good, helpful, let's add the word good in here. Good, beneficial communication requires participation in the dialectic, as does understanding and definitions. Then this open and receptive state of mind of aporia is needed to share in the logos, which is needed to do the dialectic. So it all comes down to the state of mind. Isn't that interesting? Yes. I asked my flamingo and he said, yes, very interesting. Very interesting, flamingo. Very interesting, flamingo. Okay, so the next thing he had to make clear to us and Meno is after you're okay with missing the mark. By the way, sin, that's not the translation. That's the opposite. So now we can understand religions and education systems like our current Western education system. We can understand why they are, one of the key reasons why they are so terrible, this. They think education is having all the right answers or pretending. So you get tenureship, so you get the good marks on the grade, so you get the $1 billion government grant to build rocket ships, so you get to con people to elect you so you can grift them out of their money. It's all pretending to know shit you don't. This is the opposite. Realizing open, curious, puzzled, not knowing, at a loss state of mind is actually better than lying. Okay? But now what? That's where we are in the text. Of course, we're carrying a question. What does this have to do with excellence or virtue? But where does Socrates go from here? That's where we are. Let's jump in. We are about halfway through the book. And welcome to anybody who's joining in the chat. Right, so we're being open and receptive about things which we don't know. We've seen the significance of that. Meno comes along and says, well, okay, fair enough. Okay, if you realize you don't know something, why even put in the effort to learn it? In fact, why learn anything? Because you either know it already, or if you don't know it, how will you recognize it when you get there? How will you know what it is you're after? So what's the point? What the hell? And Socrates, so here we are. So this In order to answer that, Socrates points out, hang on a second, you do know. You do know. There is something you are intuitively pointing to, even though you don't know how to define it, understand it, communicate it, or share in it with an open, stung state of mind. Even though you don't have that, you still know there is something called virtue. There is something called excellence. With your physical senses, you've only ever seen adjectives, what's the word? Examples. You've only seen virtue used as an adjective, an excellent mountain, an excellent general. So where did you get this idea of excellence or virtue? You've only seen adjectives, but you haven't seen the thing itself. And how can you recognize it? How can you point to it? How does your soul know it's worth pursuing? Why did you spend all this money in your education, bad education, to learn what is virtue? Why do you want to become a ruler of a country and maybe invade other states? Because you know what virtue is and you are insisting on that globally. Where did you get this idea of virtue? And that's what we read last time. You must have experienced it somewhere else prior to a physical incarnation, and therefore this whole game that we've been learning here, the state of mind and the activity of sharing in the dialectic and balloons and more balloons is to facilitate a remembering of those ideas that are not physical, but you have a pull towards, you seek to know. Hey, even when you are talking crap and being a debate bro, being like your teacher Gorgias, being like all of the philosophers in 2025, even then, when you're lying about knowing stuff, you still think it's good to be knowing. Otherwise, why put on the act? Your soul seeks knowingness. Even if you're using logos to be a debate bro, anti-logos. Philosophy, philos is love, sophia, wisdom, philosophy, love of wisdom. This use of language to debate, Socrates calls philonikos, love of drama, fighting. Right? And that's the currency for entertainment currently. All of these YouTube streamers and content creators are looking for drama. They like the drama. And of course, insignificant drama, because significant drama can make you sad, like Nazis again. We got Nazis in power again. Uh-oh. And we have a 800 billionaire Nazi and a crazy sociopathic sick liar Nazi in charge of the biggest military of all time. So, drama to do with smaller people. Oh, that's the appeal of racism. That's how these Nazis got into power. Hey, I know you pay bills and rent's $1 million and no one can afford food anymore, as the capitalists try to, squeeze every last drop of blood out of us. But you know who you can get interested in drama with? Poor people. Who cares? Poor people, So, garbage. What's that? Philonikos, love of drama and fighting and conflict. Of course, there's more to it than just that. There's the false sense of climbing a ladder towards truth, logos, dialectic See, this is a time when it's not relative. Yes, wealth has to be, you have to step on the necks of people if you want to be a billionaire, because billionaire means more than someone else. But philosophy isn't the same. It's not a physical thing. It's not a relative thing. It's always true, and everyone wins the more that we participate, the more that we share in it. No philosopher would ever want to keep you at a level of ignorance. No philosopher would ever want to keep you at the level of belief. So anyone who says belief is a saving grace, religion, politicians, economists, just believe in whatever we say, are not philosophers. They're actively harming you, because beliefs can cause problems. Understanding can help us to see for ourselves, recognize the principles at play, recognize the cause of the problem so that they can be addressed, and includes everyone. It's a very simple metric. Oh, by the way, if you are staying at the level of belief, believing the opinions of someone else, or faith, or any of that crap, what are you not doing? You are not creating the conditions for your own learning or remembering of what your soul knows from its experience in the metaphysical world before you were born. And our job seems to be creating the conditions for that kind of remembering through the dialectic, so that we understand the things that we can remember if they come to us, if we're lucky enough to have these insights, to communicate our understanding of true universal causes and principles in a friendly, inclusive, good and beneficial way. So we're here to do this. Oh, can't do this without that. So maybe we should be doing a dialectic on the state of mind. And that's an activity you can do if you're watching this or listening to this. Do a dialectic on aporia. See where it takes you. And feel free to share your work if you want to on the comment section in YouTube or in the Discord. And there's a link to join the Discord below. And it's free, of course. So he possessed. Okay, so let's have a quick peruse of what we just read. Has anyone taught this slave boy this geometry stuff that I just asked him questions about and he discovered? Nope, no one taught him. But he has these opinions, true opinions now, right? Did he acquire them in the present life? He can't have, therefore, or did he possess and learn them at another time? And therefore, it has to be when he was not a human being. So we have an existence before and after being a human being, and it's at that time where we must have learnt things like geometry and, of course, virtue, which is the thing we're on the hunt for together here. It's the final boss. Maybe. Or in some video games, you face the technical final boss, but it was just a prelude. Because there's a twist, because there was a real boss behind the whole thing. Oh my God. Are we doing that with moving from virtue to how to learn? Or maybe this is needed. First, we have to learn what learning is before we tackle the question of virtue. I don't know, lots of questions on the table. That's why philosophy is fun. That's why we have fun here. Hooray. I think that's a little bit loud. All right. So our opinions awaken to become knowledge through questioning. So we go through a process from opinions through to knowledge, and it goes through this activity of questioning. What's questioning? That's our dialectic. We've already been playing with this idea of dialectic. The artful and skillful, with the right state of mind, use of questions and answers. Take notice then, will the soul of himself be disposed to learning for all time? For it is clear that at all time, she either is or she is not a human being. So at all times we are learning or remembering, or both. We are learning and remembering. Either as a human being in this dialectic, or through the direct experience of those things as a soul before we were born, and maybe after. So that the truth of real beings, the aspects of the metaphysic or spiritual realm, always exists within our souls. We're always there in some way. The soul will have to be immortal, so that you take heart by attempting to search and recollect that which you do not happen to know at the present time. Otherwise, you don't remember. So we've just discovered something else as another win of this game. We've discovered that we are immortal. Hooray.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
So we're immortal. That's neat. What's that? The idea that we are immortal is a true opinion that we have awakened, that can become knowledge, so we can know for ourselves the immortality of the soul. It's open to us now. And we got those right opinions leading us to knowledge through questioning. We are reading the text through the framework of the dialectic. We're looking for the dialectic. We're trying to practice it. We're looking for terms. We're trying to arrange those terms. That's how we've gotten here. So we are demonstrating what we are defining in the text. So if the soul is immortal and we're always predisposed, or we're always disposed to learning or remembering, then we should always be searching and trying to recollect. Whether we find ourselves in the metaphysical realm, even don't be overwhelmed by pure justice or pure beauty, or all of the other things that he has said are aspects of being. Don't be overwhelmed. Continue to learn. How do we learn? By questioning, which is what? The dialectic.
Wow.
See? It's dialectic again. Hooray. My little toys. So, always engage in the dialectic. Always ask questions about your experience. Hopefully reflecting with a friend if you're lucky. Because you are always trying to search and recollect and remember what we might not know at the present time but is within us. That's pretty neat. And of course, we talked about that being a true friend yesterday in our midwifery episode, but also as we read earlier. Oh, actually, let's find the text where Socrates says, I'm going to treat you like a friend if you speak with good faith. Here we go. Page 8. So Meno, so this is right after the dialectic on what's shape, and he's using color to point to what shape is. Meno says, well, because shape in some way, according to your logos, is that which always follows color. If someone were to say that they didn't know what color is, playing dumb, but were in the same difficulty as they were about shape, they also didn't know what shape was or color, how would you have answered? Socrates, I would have answered the truth. I would have told the truth. Now that's one hell of an answer. Because not only does he mean I'll tell the truth about what color is and what shape is, I'm telling the truth about what you're doing. If you are a philonikos, lover of drama, lover of debate, you're anti-logos, you're using language to shut down the conversation. Heuristic is another Greek word for it, using language just to attack and hate and tear shit down, to defend your own stupid opinions that you have a loyalty to because that's your pathologos and you haven't done midwifery yet. I'm telling the truth about you lying. If the questioner were indeed one of those wise ones, inverted commas, people who claim to be wise, we know they're not, they're lovers of opinion, and they are heuristic, there we go. Heuristic uses language in this negative way to convince, manipulate, and antagonistic. Again, debate, fighting, debate bro stuff. I would say my answer has been stated, but if I did not state it correctly, it's your work or task to take up the logos and refute me. So this I don't know, or I have disagreement, or we disagree about a lot of things, or let's just agree to disagree, or we have a difference of opinions. Bollocks to that. Use the logos and refute it. Otherwise it's true and you should change your mind. If you can't, you're stuck, do midwifery. If we were friends, here we go.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't. Wow.
Have you read Brand?
I don't know. I have a limited amount of buttons for sound drops, and sometimes I don't have the right one. My default is
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Joe Rogan saying he doesn't want to eat a monkey. I don't know why I find that so funny. If we were friends and we chose to be dialecticing or discoursing with each other as you and I are now doing, then I must reply. Again, must. So there's a kind of imperative if you are talking with people who are genuine and they are good faith actors. And they're genuinely friends, genuinely interested, then it's your responsibility to reply in a more gentle way and a more in the way of the dialectician. So, this ties in with yesterday's episode in midwifery about being a true friend and a true lover requires not doing the opposite, not trying to crush the soul, spirit, logos, mind, or self goals of another person just because it challenges your own pathologos bullcrap. Instead, replace it with this: gentle, open, inclusive, friendly way of the dialectician. And that involves telling the truth. Number one, you've got to be interested in the truth, not just defending your family tradition, getting a nice pat on the head from mummy and daddy because you defended your religion, you defended capitalism, you defended whatever else your family are bound together in service of. Good, you are a good foot soldier for the Nazi cause, or whatever your family happens to believe. None of that. Instead, we're interested in the truth. And equally to proceed by means of the premises which the one who is questioning acknowledges they know. So if I ask you a question and your job is to tell the truth. But also the questioner, the dialectician, has to judge. Are you just lying to save face, or do you actually understand this step? Because we're going to take this step and then this step, and we go on that journey down that river or that path to understanding. So, the one who is questioning acknowledges, okay, you know this? Yes. I'm acknowledging you know this. Yes. You know what color is? Yeah. Okay, now we can talk about shape. Would you use this color? So, there we go. The idea of friend. And in the midwifery book, which we read every other day, every second day, we talked about that, along with the awareness of the pathologos, which attempts to jump in and sabotage that very thing. If you have an awareness of that, and you have that integrity or virtue, maybe, openness, curiosity about it, then you can be true friends and true lovers. So that's pretty neat. Of course. Because that's good. It's what's good, it's what's true, it's what's rational, and what helps our soul develop. It's what helps us learn, which is remembering. And if anything can be taken with us beyond this life, it's going to be this. And of course, that other conclusion, therefore we are immortal, we better verify that in our own direct experience of the immortality of the soul, because this isn't just true opinions, it can awaken us to opinions awaken to become knowledge. So let's acknowledge the word awaken here, because that's the name of the channel, Reawakening Philosophy. Or Awakening Philosophy.
But hey, that's just a theory.
Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Knowable?
I don't know. Sound drops. So in other words, you don't just believe your soul is immortal, you gain an understanding of why it has to be the case, necessarily, and maybe even acknowledge there's a beauty in the fact we can remember. There's a beauty in the fact that every time we make a mistake, it can be an invitation to a kind of recollection through the dialectic, which can allow us to remember and learn. What we're learning is the best sorts of things, justice itself, beauty itself. It's experienced as the height of bliss. So it's literally the greatest experiences you can have, which is what? The soul, the mind turning around and knowing the mind in the experience of knowledge we call usia, self-reflection, but direct self-reflection, immediate self-reflection. So it's the best thing to be aware of. Also the most scope, because everything we do, we try and be just about it. If we have virtue, we try and fight injustice. We better know what justice is. And also we're naturally attracted to that which is beautiful. Can't help it. It's one of the features of beauty. It smacks you in the face. You're walking down the street or you're scrolling through Twitch and you see someone with an amazing, rare amount of beauty. You can't help but look. You can manipulate that on social media platforms like Instagram, where all of the ads start with like physically beautiful women in swimsuits. Whether you like it or not, because it grabs your attention. That's the nature of beauty. Again, the misuse of beauty happens with our pathologos as well. So physical beauty isn't the height of beauty. Because the height of beauty is also connected with truth, goodness, and benefit. And if you see a person like that, you can't help but be amazed. You can't help but be brought into this. Aporia, stung, curious. Why is that person so beautiful? Why is their intelligence illuminating their physical beauty in some amazing way? Why is there such an attraction towards such a beautiful soul? What's going on here? I don't know, but I'm puzzled and I am stung about it. So beauty can help us with this state of mind, maybe virtue of aporia or being stung, which itself allows us to share in the logos. The ideal would be to take that wonder about that beauty of that soul and say, hey, let's have coffee and talk about where does your beauty come from? Why do you have it? Why is it rare? Over coffee. So, keep learning, keep searching, keep recollecting that which you don't know. Meno thinks, you appear to be speaking well, Socrates, although I don't know how. Really illuminating the point. There is something intuitively I grasp or recognize or respond to do with the truth of what you're saying, even though it's against my upbringing and education and beliefs. But because I lack this searching and questioning and dialectic, I don't know how. You're telling the truth, but I don't know how you're doing it. Socrates says, yeah, I also think I'm speaking well. But I would indeed not rely on the logos in every other way. Okay. Now, this is a strangely translated. We checked this out last time. What he says here is each of the individual arguments, I'm not completely tied to. I'm not going to fight for every one of those particular arguments because I don't know if they're right or not. But the conclusion that we must search for what we don't know now, currently, rather than thinking it's not possible to discover that which we don't know. This idea that we must search and not believe it's out of our grasp is something I will fight in both word and deed for, because that will make us better, more courageous, less idle. Now, the word here for idle is more beneficial. So we got to flip it. We'll be made better, more courageous, and more beneficial if we are always seeking to know that which we don't, as opposed to closed-minded idiots like yourself, maybe, who think they know everything or whatever and don't want to learn anything new. And anything who is different or other, we'll call them other. We'll give them a nasty name like immigrant or illegal or brown person or woman or whatever it is, and attack it. That's the pathologos. That's the negative force of the pathologos that is being commoditized and militarized by politicians and capitalists. The fact that we are trained to go in the other direction. Don't learn new things. Don't seek to realize you're wrong. Don't change your mind. So we're saying the opposite. You'll be better. Have more courage. You'll be able to do more benefit if you are always seeking for what you know. So this aporia state of not knowing and puzzled and curious is then followed by number 5, which is take notice then for all time. Searching for all time as soul must necessarily be immortal. For all time as the soul is immortal. Searching through questions. Let's abbreviate that. Because we've got questions, we've got the person asking the questions, we've got the person judging the answers if it's legitimate, we've got the keeping them true to their conclusions. So let's put all that friendly way, inclusive way, not heuristic or antagonistic, all those things. Searching with the dialectic, all those things come together as the dialectic. To recollect or remember. To recollect or remember that which we don't know at the present time. Socrates is going to go to battle in both word and deed. contend in every way about the following in word and deed. Okay, so in the Balboa translation, there's no reference to battle, but in the other translation there is. Let's pull that up. Ooh. Let's pull that up to see it for ourselves. '86C. Here we go. This was the, I guess, second best, or maybe third best translation. This is the Loeb translation, or the Fowler. Loeb is the name of the series of books. Fowler is the translator. You can find this for free on Perseus. It's okay, the Balboa translation that we're reading, and it's free, and there's a link below if you want to get a copy for free, is the best by far. Like, it's a 10 out of 10. 6 out of 10, or maybe 5 out of 10 is the Rouse. 4 out of 10 is this one here. And then the other ones are like 2s and 1s. So it's pretty much the next best, and it's free on the internet. Perseus is the website. Meno is the book. What you say commends itself to me, Socrates, about the soul being immortal and about us having to and about learning being remembering. But I don't know how. You're not using the same bollocks debate bro tricks that I learned. It also appears to me, Meno. So it does to me. Commend itself. Most of the points I have made in support of my argument are not such as I can confidently assert, but the belief in the duty of inquiring after what we do not know will make us better, make us braver, and make us less helpless or more helpful than the notion that there is not even a possibility of discovering what we don't know, nor do we have any duty to inquire after it. This is a point which I am determined to do battle, as so far as I am able in both word and deed. So, slightly different translation, but makes the point a bit harder. There we go. We're back on the beach. That's where we are. Socrates making the point, you know what? Each of the individual arguments, I couldn't say I'm certain about. But the conclusion, everything I do will be in both word and deed, I will fight for that conclusion. Is it because it's something he knows? I don't know. What does Socrates know? What is knowing? And how does it relate to virtue? So that's where we are. Let's keep reading. Bring up my pen. And in this again, you appear to be speaking well, O Socrates. If only he knew how to understand and could say why he's speaking well. Therefore, inasmuch as we are of one mind, that one must... Okay, I'm going to put this, because we've been talking about friendship and true love and being true lovers. Here we have this idea of being of one mind. Can we add that to our... Can we add that to our questioning our wonder about what those things are. We have one mind, that one must search for that which one does not know. Do you wish that we make the effort in common to search into what in the world virtue is? Okay. So he's inviting him. And what are we doing? We're making an effort, which is what? Becoming better, more courageous, and more helpful. And it's, yeah. And to search into what the heck virtue is. Now, that expression, into what in the world virtue is a funny one. We know what he means, but I don't like to use it because it's not of the physical world. So it can be a bit confusing sometimes. So, invitation. You're not forcing someone to come along. Oh, that's my desk. Here we go. But I, says Meno, Socrates, would nevertheless be most pleased both to consider and hear about that inquiry which I first mentioned, as to whether we must assume that virtue is truly teachable or whether it arises naturally. So, after hearing all this, Meno goes, yeah, but can we talk about whether it's teachable or whether it occurs naturally in human beings? Which is wild, because he doesn't know what it is. So why is he talking about whether or not it can be teachable? Socrates has made this point to him already. But if on the one hand I was the ruler, not only of myself, Meno, but also of you, we would not have considered whether virtue is teachable or not teachable until, if I was the ruler of myself and also of you. So we have a question, why isn't Meno letting him be a teacher or being in charge? Like, I would want this guy in charge. For some reason my highlighter is thinner than before. Wonder why. That's really thin. And so we would not, if I was the one in charge, I would not have considered whether virtue is teachable or not teachable until we have first searched into whatsoever self is. Now, eagle-eyed viewers will recognize this as one of those puzzles. Because self, and I've said it before, worth saying again, has 3 levels of meaning at least. Three levels of meaning at least. The first one is it. The second one is the honorific, that metaphysical realm which we are seeking to find the principles and causes living in, that we can have as knowledge or nous. That self, we talk about self-virtue or self-justice. And of course, that even needs to have a cause. That's the one self. Now, earlier we talked, Socrates talked about, hey, all of the parts of virtue, aspects of virtue like justice and so on, are all beings, are all parts or aspects of this realm of being. So if we want to know virtue as a whole, we got to know we got to see the whole from a different perspective. So we might need to know the self before we can know the whole of virtue. Because the self is beyond virtue. Let's bring up the model again. Because the self is beyond being. Excuse me, I misspoke. Here we go. 3 levels. Physical world. Go back and forth with this in our reincarnation. Socrates says, meet me here, the top of being, because we are on this hunt. And in the quest for virtue, if justice and courage are the selves, are parts of virtue, what's virtue as a whole? And if it's the whole of being, how can you know the whole of being unless you are on a higher level looking down? Similar to what Socrates is doing in this realm, being able to see the nature of beliefs and opinions and using it to benefit Meno, who's way down here. He doesn't even know about this. Cool? Cool. So, the word self can mean the thing we're talking about, can mean the honorific here, or can mean the ultimate, the one self. Keep that in mind, because it gives you a way of unlocking different meaning in the text. But let's start with the basic one. We would not have asked whether or not virtue is teachable until we had first searched into whatsoever it is. Make sense? Now, your job is to read the same sentence with the other 2 meanings of self and see what comes up for you. But on the other hand, seeing as you do not first attempt to rule thyself, throwing bombs. No, throwing jabs, really. You do not attempt to rule, because you can have a wisdom bomb or a truth bomb. But I guess this is a truth bomb. You do not at first attempt to rule yourself. Surely then, in order to be a free man, okay, so even 2,500 years ago, the ignorant people who are harming themselves and others insist on their right to do so because that's freedom, liberty. I have the freedom to kick my puppy. Bullshit you do. I have the freedom to believe whatever I want. Same answer. Because what do beliefs end up doing? Kicking puppies, genociding humans, destroying our race, preventing our progression into the Logos, because you know what's a threat to your stupid false opinions, fascist? Logos. So you don't have a right. Why would you? Why would you insist on a right to your own harm? I have a right to stab this knife into my eye. How dare you set up safety measures for the workplace? Bollocks. Notice, the only people who would say, I have a right to fall off this railing into this vat of hot acid. So workplace health and safety, with their insisting there's a safety rail, that's infringing on my freedom. No one would ever say that. The only people who do are the businessmen and capitalists who don't care about the safety of people and just want to spend less money on guardrails. The most evil doesn't exist, but the most pathologos and harmful people, pathologos-driven people, would be the only ones insisting on a right to do the thing that causes harm, not put in a safety rail. We know this. That's why it's only the multi-billionaires or the millionaires and billionaires who are trying to stop unions from forming. Unions help everyone. Even you, if you can think beyond short-term capitalist. Think about it. Do a dialectic on it. What would follow if the people in your community had money, had all their limbs, weren't being forced to eat poison? What would happen? What kind of world would that be? How much security would you need to leave your house to buy eggs? In other words, everyone wins in the logos. Similarly, the only person insisting that they are a free man if they have a right to their own false, harmful opinions are the people who have been duped to become bootlickers for their oppressors. So anyone saying, oh, you know, we don't need safety standards in our food, or we don't need safety rails in our workplace. It's the same thing as saying we don't need truth and understanding. Logos. I have a right to my false, harmful opinions. People talking in that way have been brainwashed to insist on the thing that harms them. But it's the catchphrase that was used even back then, to the point where Socrates can recognize it. Yeah, I know that you don't attempt to rule yourself with any justice, because that's what it means to be a free man, right? Isn't that the appeal of Trump and the racists? We're going to give you people to kick. Isn't that the appeal of slavery? They fought for slavery so they can torture and abuse and rape their slaves, because that's freedom. Oh, not freedom for the slaves. Different virtue for the slaves, says Meno. So because you're not ruling yourself properly, because you want to be a free man, you want to have liberty, freedom above all, the freedom to harm yourself, but instead you try to rule me. Oh, by the way, those people who insist that they should get to do whatever they want, billionaires or the billionaire bootlickers, the people who say libertarianism or whatever, they also try to rule others. I should have freedom, but I should impose my beliefs on others. I should have the freedom to be Christian and kill Muslims. This is the situation we're in today, and good thing we have Socrates to help us understand it. So, you don't rule yourself to be free, what you think is free, but you also want to rule me, tell me what to do. The guy with the actual wisdom? And I will yield for you. For what else can be done? Interesting. Why is Socrates doing that? I will yield. Why Socrates? Not only is this guy a joker to himself, he wants to be in charge of you. But what else can be done? Therefore, we must consider what the qualities are of that which we do not yet know what it is. Therefore, so before we get the thing nailed down, let's look at its qualities. Because, hey, you're calling the shots, big man. Therefore, if nothing else, you will loosen just a little of your reign to me, and allow, loosen some of your control to me, let me rule a little bit, and allow us to consider self by way of a hypothesis. We've been talking about questions, now we are bringing in hypotheses. Reminder, this game, the archetype of the hero's journey, our destiny for all human beings, the noblest game in town, the best game in town, that's us here. We can add from today, develop and maintain being stung, which is that puzzled state of mind. So this is part of what it means to be on the adventure, on the journey. S-T-U-N-G. Stung. Be stung. Be stung. Hey, like a bee sting, but we're saying be as in your state of being. So be stung. But we've also talked about asking questions, carrying them in a little sack in your inventory, and also developing hypotheses. Don't become blindly loyal to one like an idiot, but carry a sack of hypotheses around to see what plays out, to see what you can see by... These are if statements. It's not knowledge. Now we're on hypotheses. If self is teachable or in some other way. I mean by way of hypotheses in the following way. Just as geometricians often consider when selves are asked by someone if this triangular space can also be inscribed within the circle, the other one will reply, I do not know yet whether this is so, but I think... I do not know yet, but I think there has to be a certain hypothesis. The heck was that? To prepare us, as it were, for the task at hand. If, on the one hand, this triangular space is such as this, that when it is applied to the given line, it will fall short by a space. Okay, now we have the author jumping into Proculus's commentary on the first book of Euclid's Elements. All right, so the translator has recognized he's using language that applies to Euclid's geometry. Euclid's geometry is as complete a system of understanding as you can find, I think. And it was well known about. So he's using the language of a system of understanding, which also involves questions and hypotheses. So our author has recognized this language in Socrates, and Socrates is using it because both Socrates and Meno are familiar with this language, Euclid's geometry. And so now he's adding a whole bunch of stuff that we don't have to read right now. All right. Okay, great. So, if this triangular space is applied to a given line, so what's the question? The question is, can this triangular space be also inscribed within the circle? Okay, let's put it on the board. Let's go here. So we have this circle. Circle. And we have a triangle. Can this triangle fit in here like this? If it falls short by a space such as that which is being applied, it appears to me, oh my goodness, this language. Okay. This is the only downside with having the Balboa translation. Sometimes it's hard to read long passages that are to do with something specific in English. So let's jump over to the lobe. Closed it. Get this math down. $87C. right, here we go. Let's read this part. Had I control over you, Meno, as over myself, we should not have begun considering whether virtue can or cannot be taught until we first inquired into the main question of what it is. But as you do not so much as attempt to control yourself, you are so fond of your liberty, there's the big L word, right? That is used by oppressors, fascists, capitalists, and oppressors to trick the people to vote against their own interest. Don't you have the freedom to get paid nothing? Don't you have the freedom to not have safety rails at work? Don't you want the freedom to not have any school lunches for children? Right? Freedom to be oppressed by me? Libertarianism, that's what it is. Hooray, I mean boo for them. But of course, they are the most in need for this kind of topic, this kind of conversation, and Meno is one of those people. So you're so fond of your liberty and both attempt and hold control over me. Interesting idea of liberty. Right, this is how it works because those people are not interested in principles or causes. So it's one rule for you, one rule for thee, one rule for me. So my freedom is a freedom to shit on you. That's what slavery is all about. Let's wake up. I will yield to your request. What else am I to do? So it seems that we are to consider what sort of thing it is of which we do not yet know what it is. Well, the least you can do is relax just a little bit of your authority and allow the question whether virtue comes by teaching or some other way to be examined by means of a hypothesis. I mean by hypothesis what the geometricians often do in dealing with a question put to them. For example, whether a certain area is capable of being inscribed as a triangular space within a given circle. This guy. No, this guy. Hey, geometrician, can I put my circle in your... Wait, can I put my triangle in your circle? Will it fit? Something we all say to geometricians every day. They reply, I cannot yet tell. So this is a good point. So geometry itself, Euclid itself, or just math itself, is a good example of why it's okay to be wrong. You start every equation not knowing how to balance it, not knowing the answer. In our world, we insist on our ignorance for the fame, power, and money it gives us. Problem, it's wrong. Be open and curious or aporia. So it's a good example of what we're learning. But then when we don't know something, you don't just stay not knowing, you develop a hypothesis. I cannot yet tell whether that triangle has the capacity to fit into my circle, but I think, if I may put it so, I have a certain helpful hypothesis for the problem, and it is as follows. If this area... What's that? All right, so yeah, okay, so this is the language used in Euclid to name circles and triangles and things. If the area of the circle falls short by a space similar to that which you have just applied, then I take it you have one consequence, and if it's impossible for it to fall short, then some other. Accordingly, I wish to put a hypothesis before I state our conclusion as regards to inscribing this figure in the circle by saying whether it is impossible or not. In the same way with regard to our question. So he's teaching us about hypotheses, which we need to use in philosophy to know the nature of virtue, the nature of the good, the nature of the self, the nature of reality, all the things we want to know. A hypothesis has two parts. If it is, this happens. If it isn't, this happens. It either falls short or doesn't? I don't know yet, but I think he might be talking about triangle BDG in an area of a given rectangle. Rectangle? I don't know. We'll figure it out. In the same way, in regard to our question of about virtue, since we do not know either what it is or what kind of thing it may be, we had best make use of a hypothesis in considering whether it can be taught or not, as thus, what kind of thing must virtue be in the class of mental properties, so as to be teachable or not? In the first case, if it is something dissimilar or similar to knowledge, is it taught or not? Okay, so if we want to know whether it's teachable, we are talking about the psychological or mental. My lights are all funny all the time. We are talking about a certain property of it to do with our cognition. So we would often use our cognitive functions. What cognitive functions does it point to? Is it an object of knowledge? Is it an object of belief? Then, if it's similar to knowledge, is it taught or not? Can you teach knowledge? Or as we were saying just now, remembered. Okay, so when we're teaching, we're actually remembering. Is virtue similar to knowledge? And is knowledge, how do we remember knowledge? Let us have no disputing about the choice of a name. Is it taught? Or is not this fact plain to anyone, that the one and only thing taught to men is knowledge? Okay, another truth bomb about reality that Socrates is sneaking in there. You don't sneak a bomb in, do you? I don't know. Normally you drop a bomb. Normally it hits hard, like dropping the mic on stage. It's supposed to be dramatic. Then if virtue is a kind, Meno agrees, the one and only thing taught to men is knowledge. What the heck does that mean? Then if virtue is a kind of knowledge, clearly it must be taught. Certainly. So you see, you've made short work of this question. If virtue belongs to one class of things that is teachable, then it is teachable. If not, another. So, if teaching is a process of dialectic that we engage in that will allow us to first gain right opinions and then open us up to nous or knowledge or direct experience, if that's what's knowable and that's within us already, so it's a kind of remembering of what's true immortally, just as our soul is immortal. So it's immortal causes, principles, and aspects of ultimate reality that we can know because it's within our soul already. And we know it through teaching, which is really remembering, which is what happens as a result of the dialectic. If that's all true, if that's our hypothesis, then for us to answer your question, is virtue teachable? It better be one of these things which is in the class of knowledge. That's the hypothesis. If A, then B. If not, then not. Neat. So we've really reframed it. So he's saying, okay, you know what? You want to be a libertarian, have the freedom to not be tied down. And I've seen this. I've talked already about this. I was in a music class, and there was this one old guy who, like, the very first thing we learned was how to how to wind up cables. You don't like wind it like a hose. You go over then under. It just helps maintain the integrity of your guitar leads and your microphone leads and things. And it helps you to unfold it quickly without them getting knotted up. And this old guy had the old way, just rap. And I was like, oh, let me help you. I can help you learn this thing that you were actually being taught. No, I have a right, says this man. I have a right to do it the wrong way. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You've got a right to do it the wrong way. What does that mean? You can do it the wrong way, but not because you have a right to it. I don't understand what you're talking about. And why would you insist on the right to do it the wrong way? Anyway, that person is insisting they have a right to do it the wrong way, and that simple right that they're insisting on gives them the knowledge and the art and the skill and the ability to be a ruler of someone else. That's part of it. People who insist on their right to be wrong are not just stopping there. That right to be wrong is what makes me so wise. And I need to have my own podcast. I need to be a president of America. I need to run a company. Libertarians are fascists. In that sense. I have a right to be ignorant and harmful, and to insist I should use my ignorance and harmful actions as a ruler on other people. Now, if that were the case, you would only do harmful and ignorant things. It's stupid. It's stupid. Stop it. Says Socrates to Meno. But Socrates pretended to go along with it. All right. You want to be ignorant and you want to be in charge. All right. Libertarian. Fine. By the way, if we were to answer, give me a little bit of leeway to answer your question. And I'll point to the fact that, hang on a second. If it's teachable, rememberable, then it needs to be within the cognitive class, or the class of things that can be apprehended by what we call knowledge or nous. Because that's the immortal knowledge we have within our soul that we are awakening through awakening philosophy. Hooray. The dialectic. If that's the only thing that we're here to learn and the only thing that's rememberable, everything else is like libertarian beliefs, false, harmful, stupid beliefs. Everything that's not about causes and principles that exist in being for eternity, for that we know as the immortal aspect of our own soul. If anything other than that is garbage, well, we've got a clue about what we should be doing while we're here, of course, the dialectic. We see it over and over again. But also, it must mean that virtue better be something to do with knowledge, otherwise it's not teachable. So your question about whether or not virtue is teachable or not comes down to, once again, what is virtue? Does it have the quality of knowledge? If not, so even though you use your libertarian beliefs to insist you need to be ignorant and you also need to be in charge of me. And by the way, libertarian, this way of thinking that freedom above all, is harmful because it rejects judgment. You cannot judge whether one person is better than another. Everyone should be given equal freedom. Or one belief is false. Or, hey, is racism... Like it's the thing, hey, you should even tolerate racism. You should, says the libertarians and the fascists and the right-wingers, you should tolerate my intolerance. Bollocks to that. That's not what tolerance is. It's not an absence of judging between what is good and bad or harmful and beneficial. It is the most important thing. You are being the most stupid if you reject that. If you're crossing the street, you must judge whether it's good to cross the street now, whether it's harmful to cross the street when there's a truck coming. You must judge always. The only people who reject judgment for belief, we've already said, are grifters and con artists trying to get you to be slaves to them because you're rejecting judgment for belief. Also, we're seeing here, libertarians, we shouldn't judge who should be in control of this conversation. Who should be in control of this conversation? Maybe the one with the art of the dialectic? Someone with the name of Socrates should be in charge? What do you think, Chicken? Chicken thinks... Oh, Socrates should be in charge. Chicken thinks that Socrates should be in charge. And the idea is to reject the logos. The logos is the art of judging. We've already seen the dialectician has to judge whether he's answered honestly. Do you actually understand what color is? Oh, you do? I don't think you do. I got to make that call. Let's really nail it down to make sure. I think you're just trying to save face, or I think you're a bit embarrassed, or whatever. We need to agree on what color is so that we can go on to understanding shape, and then on and on and on until we get to the self. Just like who should fly the plane? Someone with the art of being a pilot, or some libertarian getting drunk in first class insisting, hey, it's my freedom to do whatever the heck I want and to be in charge of other people. You shall not judge me. You shall not judge my opinions. You shall not judge my state of being. You shall not judge my level of logos. You shall not judge the influence of my pathologos. Be a slave I can kick around. Libertarians like slavery because of that. So, very common even today. Are we insisting our politicians have the art of the logos, the art of the dialectic? No. Is that a problem? Frig yes. Frig yes. Heck yes. By Zeus, yes, it's the problem. It's the problem. If there was a hospital where there was every single patient was dying, that's a problem. We live in a society where there are people unnecessarily dying. We might want to have a look into the hospital and say who's in charge. Oh, this doctor doesn't have a medical degree, hasn't demonstrated an understanding, a knowledge of the ideal, and an application of an art to benefit in the field of medicine. So this doctor is just doing whatever the heck he wants to these patients and everyone's dying. Maybe we should realize that's the cause of the problem, insist the doctor have the art of medicine, and then all of a sudden the mortality rate would go back down to, I don't know, 1 or 2. We'd solve the problem. Equally so, we have genocides and starvations and capitalism and wealth inequality and exploitation of the working class people. All these terrible things that we all know are friggin' terrible and wrong and shouldn't be there. So what do we need to do? Walk in and say, who has the art of Socrates? Who has the art of the dialectic? Because we just read in the Meno today that it's necessary for A, understanding, for B, definition, for C, communicating that, and for D, communicating that which actually friggin' helps people. Rational, mature, beneficial. So this very interplay here between Meno and Socrates points to something archetypal about the human condition, that it's true then, 2,500 years ago, and it's the problem we have to deal with right now still. Why are we not insisting on the art of the logos and dialectic for people in charge of anything, especially government, especially psychology, and especially philosophy? It's insane to ignore. But one of the things that the people with the ignorance will do is train the most vulnerable and stupid people to be bootlickers, to be foot soldiers for him. They're the libertarians. They're the ones who say, hey, don't judge Elon, or don't judge Trump, or don't judge Hitler, because freedom, right? Freedom. Everyone, freedom? Shouldn't they have the freedom to destroy humanity? And what I'm really getting at is, shouldn't I have the freedom to also be ignorant and in charge? So we say, we don't see a lot of these bootlickers and libertarians don't see themselves as the oppressed. They see themselves as temporarily embarrassed oppressors, temporarily embarrassed billionaires. One day they will be a billionaire and they don't want any restrictions. It will never happen, because that's not the way the system is. Once we have a wealthy class, they spend all their times making it so they are the only ones with wealth, because wealth is relative. If everyone becomes rich, they wouldn't be special and rich anymore. Anyway, so the same dynamic that's very causal to the problems faced by individuals and society then is still true now. That should tell us something about where we are and what we've been doing for the last 2,500 years. What have we been doing?
This guy had to admit,
Wait,
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing
No one
actual
seems to be
problems.
learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
This would be doing it. So, we have an insight into the bootlickers or the foot soldiers for the fascists. So we need to recognize, oh, you're a libertarian. You're like Meno. At 86. At 86 D of the text. Of the Meno. You're like Meno at 86D. You're 86D Meno. Someone ignorant, unwilling to be open-minded or curious or stung, wants to be in charge despite your ignorance, and even when talking to someone who actually has wisdom and the art of the dialectic and can freaking help you, you still want to be in charge. So you're working hard to maintain your ignorance and sickness, and insisting, because you're from a rich family, that you should be in charge of Athens or the military or something. Oh, you're at 86D Meno. That's what we can say to libertarians from now on. By the way, that sort of way of being, not only are you going to be a harmful ruler to others, you are being a stupid ruler to yourself. You are not ruling yourself. Hey, who am I to judge whether ice cream is more healthy than a salad for dinner? You are. That's your friggin' job. You're supposed to judge. Everyone is supposed to judge based on the good and what's harmful. Now, if the nature of truly good and truly beneficial is an object of knowledge, that better be something we learn through remembering and dialectic and use as our model in the art. How are you actually helping people? Are you helping them be this? So, that's all of that's contained in this issue here. 86D Meno. Socrates was able to sidestep it without addressing. So we've just addressed that directly, which is a way that Socrates writes, or Plato writes. He gives you the material to find a question and reflect on it. That's ousia. Ourselves. So, anyone watching? We've had a nice reflection on 86D, giving you hopefully material that you can do a dialectic on libertarianism. Or 86D Meno, liberty above all. When you're not ruling yourself, you're insisting that you should rule others, and you're being a stupid idiot. Make that into a dialectic. What if libertarian existed within the soul of a person? What if it didn't? Or make libertarian, what if it didn't? Reminder. The activity we're doing, the activity of philosophy, the activity of learning and remembering, everything comes down to this dialectic, baby. Now, we've got a little box to show it. Oh, we have it. Where is it? Here we go. Here's the dialectic. If the subject exists and if it doesn't. So you could be doing a dialectic on libertarian. There's only if the subject exists, if libertarianism exists, or 86D Meno exists, but also if it didn't, what would follow? 4 categories. Give a definition of the thing. What is the thing itself in relation to itself? Just itself. You can say what's true about it, what's false, and what's both true if you want to add even greater division. But pretty much it's done. How does it function? How do those having been affected by the functioning then affect others? That's division. And then of those others being affected in this way, can you synthesize a key idea that you can then take back to the start? That synthesis and analysis, the 2 parts of the conclusion. So there's only 4 stages. Simple, simple, simple. Oh, and then do the same for what if it doesn't exist. Now you can do that for this 86D libertarianism. Or you can say, hey, you know what? This idea that judgment shouldn't exist, and therefore I should insist that I'm a ruler because of freedom, even though I'm not ruling myself. That's really what happens if the dialectic doesn't exist, or if truth doesn't exist, or if knowledge doesn't, or if art doesn't. If the art of dialectic does not exist, so you can put all of these terms we've pulled out from our reflection of how Meno is functioning as true then as it is true today, and put them in this category, which means you can get open yourself to new insights or new remembering, because everything in this line that Meno is demonstrating, the opposite will give you a high. Again, this is all if. This is the hypothesis that Socrates is pointing to. You got to use this. He used geometry as an example, but we know he's talking about this. If you can create a hypothesis of what happens if the art of the logos exists. If art of the logos, let's say self-logos to be fancy, because reminding us that the logos is the self-logos. It's ourselves, talking to ourselves in every possible way, through dreams, thoughts, reality, dramas, this reading especially. It's the self communicating to us so that we, well, what follows from what we're reading, remember ourselves. Remember our immortal nature. And by the way, the self, for there to be a knowledge that is immortal at the realm of being, there has to be some cause or some knower of that immortal. That's the self that's beyond even being. So that's what we're headed, the self. Know thyself. You are all of it. You are communicating to yourself. We need to remember all that. So if we're filling in Meno over here, then we can just create the opposite. Oh, if this is the definition of what happens if the logos doesn't exist, then just flip it around. The opposite might give you an insight into what it would be like to have the art of the logos, to demonstrate the art of the logos, to use the art of the logos. So that's the thing about the dialectic. It can open up insights. And what we're saying is, hey, by the way, these insights, it's a remembering of something within our soul that's immortal. So the 4 categories: if the thing is, if the thing isn't. And you can remember them with 2 letters, S and O. S to S, the subject itself, the subject that you've just defined, how it relates to others, those others having been affected, how do they relate to other others, and of those others, can you unify that into a single theme and then take it back to that S at the start. Went through that kind of fast, but watched a few times. We talk about it a lot. So 86D, Meno, libertarianism. Socrates sees through it, of course, and says, you know what? Okay, you're in charge, mate. You're the guy. You're the man, Meno. Oh, big man. Big man on campus. By the way, give me a little bit of leeway just to point out that, okay, we are going to look for the qualities of something without defining it first. We are going to maybe look to its divisions without defining it. So you obviously don't know the dialectic. You're not thinking in a rational dialectical way. But if we want to talk about its qualities and whether or not it's teachable, by the way, is it knowledge that's teachable? So really, to answer that question, again, we have to go back to the start and say whether virtue is an object of knowledge. If it is, it's teachable, rememberable through the dialectic, provided we are doing our best to be aporia, stung, open, curious, and we are doing that thing Socrates is going to fight in both word and deed for, being open and curious and seeking to know. And we go back to the start and make sure we're doing it in a friendly, truthful way, good faith way. We're genuinely seeking the truth. Then we can be friends with ourselves, to ask the dialectic in an stung, curious, aporia way that will lead us to true opinions, which will open us up to knowledge. That's a remembering, because those things that we are remembering must be within our soul, which has to be therefore immortal. Therefore, that's what teaching really is. And if you're wondering if virtue can be taught, you're really asking, is virtue one of the objects of knowledge? Is it a knowable thing? So we're back onto the subject. What is the thing itself? Brilliant. Socrates gets a round of applause for that demonstration of the art. And that can be a question, is if we had the logos, the art of the logos as Socrates did, would we be able to navigate these, again, beliefs? If the object of knowledge is up here, those things that are immortal, these selves, where's my pen? These selves which are immortal because they're in the immortal realm of being, not the physical realm of becoming. If that's the case, and all of our beliefs and opinions, our images, opinions, and beliefs are in this physical world, is Socrates able to use his art to navigate through Meno's libertarian beliefs and his ignorance because he is here and he's able to look down and see them as a whole? Is he able to look at this thing itself as justice, courage, and beauty itself, to be able to use that as a model, just like the doctor uses the model of health to judge whether someone's sick? Is Socrates so adept and what's the word? Charming in his ability to navigate all these beliefs because, number one, he sees them all as a whole, but number two, he has the true model of truth that he can compare it to? Is that why? Therefore, is living here the art of the dialectic? And what about our other question? If these aspects of virtue, like courage and justice, are in here as aspects of being, to really know virtue, do we have to be up here, looking down here? Great questions to end today with. Great work for Socrates. Great work us for having a new definition of those fascist bootlickers, libertarians. They are actually 86D Meno people, and their problem is they have been taught not to judge. Specifically, not to judge against truth and benefit. So what's good, which is here, and what benefits, which is bestowing the logos through the dialectic, inviting, of course, so we can go from our false images, opinions, and beliefs, through self-reflection, following the dialectic of the self-logos up here. That's benefit. And we are wondering if this is virtue, if this is virtue, if all of it's virtue, all of it with the art to be able to go back and forth. What is virtue? I don't know. I'm really stung. I'm in a lot of aporia. And but also in a lot of awe about Socrates' way of navigating 86D, Libertarian Meno. 86D is the Stephanus number. It's like a universal standard of pointing to parts of the text because there are different translators who translate in different ways. So page numbers wouldn't really work. But it's 86D Meno. Good work, Socrates. Hooray for you. And we're back on the question, is virtue an object of knowledge? So we're wondering about that. We're also wondering about what exactly knowledge is. And now we've got this other idea of, well, hang on, teaching is remembering. So is virtue a knowable thing? In which case, it's likely teachable or not teachable, rememberable through the sharing as a honest person, following truth and integrity, being courageous and helpful. Oh, if we do this, we become more what is it? If we do this, if it is knowable, virtue is knowable through the dialectic, then we better do everything we can because we'll be made better. We'll be made better, more courageous, and more beneficial if we are always searching for that which we don't know yet at the moment. We do know it. You got to remember it. That's the dialectic. And if you know someone who has this level of soul, or this level of beauty within their soul, or this level of curiosity, aporia, this level of integrity, or maybe they just had so much experience with libertarians and people rejecting judgment, or people refusing to look at causes or principles, or refusing to act according to principles, or insisting they need to be in charge just because they're libertarian, even though they're not even good masters of themselves. Maybe they've had a lot of those people in their lives and they're sick of that crap and they actually want to know the truth and talk with people who are better. In which case, if you know someone like that, invite them to this game to become even better than they are, even more courageous than they are, even more beneficial than they are, so that you can benefit from their beautiful company and be spending your time here doing everything you can to search for what you don't currently know. Because that's something that Socrates is saying, yeah, that's something I'll fight in word and deed for. So, as we wonder about the nature of virtue, whether it's knowable, we wonder about what does it mean if our soul is immortal? What does it mean if learning is remembering? And wondering what would it mean to extend this game and practice the dialectic at all times with friends over coffee. As we wonder about all those things, take the wondering with you on your day. See how it goes. See if carrying those wondering questions, wonderment questions with you all day has an effect. Thinking about these questions and hypotheses. And let us know in the chat how it goes. Does it affect you? Did it change you? Did it help you? Did it open you up to remembering anything? And what did you say to that like-minded soul? What does Socrates say? We are of one mind. When you found someone you can be of one mind with, so that you can make an effort in common to search for what is virtue through this dialectic. If you were successful in having this conversation over coffee, please share in the comment section. What did you do to be so persuasive? Because we would all be so lucky. Nevertheless, you have found this kind of conversation and these sorts of people here. So if you are that sort of a person, either had enough, sick of the lack of knowledge, art, truth, understanding, because everyone else is insisting on their ignorance and acting like jerks. If you're sick of that and you want better sort of people, you're in the right place here. Feel free to join the Discord. There's a link below. Like and subscribe to join in real time if you want to ask questions. You do get a notification on Discord when we go live. Or if you're just sick of Menos, but you're just curious. You want to know the truth. You want to know what you're here for. You want to know where you came from. You want to know where you're going. You want to know the nature of your soul, and you want to know what's knowable and know it. Then this is your coffee meeting for today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. What? Outro music. Bye. And now, exit screen.